The early 2010s were not what I'd call nice to Nintendo. Unfortunately for pretty much all parties, Nintendo's most recent console, the Wii U, had essentially flopped when compared to its money-printing successor, the Wii. It was underperforming, to such a point where its handheld brother, the 3DS, seemed like it was pulling double duty for the company. Even the release of a new Super Smash Bros., which did bring sales of the system up, still didn't bring it to the heights that the Wii had reached. The decision to also release the game on the much more popular 3DS a whole month early likely didn't help with those sales. And with that, it seemed inevitable that the Wii U was destined to be stuck as this system that seemingly only fans of Nintendo would be willing to buy. So, Nintendo did what Nintendo does best: make games. Which was how the developers of Nintendo's Entertainment Analysis and Development Division, or EAD for short, got to work on a new IP, which would use the strengths of the Wii U to create a game that was really like no other out there. All that was left to do was see if it would make its mark on the world in ink, or dissolve like many others in the ocean of other new games and IPs. It was probably a relief for Nintendo EAD when Splatoon just so happened to leave a lot more than a simple mark. I remember first hearing about this game from a friend in high school. For convenience, let's call him Reggie. I was over at Reggie's house and we were playing Smash on his Wii U when he turned on the eShop all of a sudden. I vividly remember the feeling of almost awe I got when I was blasted by the sight of the eShop. The front banner proudly advertising this new game, Splatoon, all as this overly catchy track played in the background. Memory is just memory though. It was a lot less than that since I recently looked to find footage of the eShop takeover I was remembering, but even the simple sound of Splatak, the song that was being played, left such an impression on me for all this time. I was honestly a bit confused at first. I would go home after that and not think too much about it. It wouldn't be until much later, a good few months later, that I would be back at Reggie's house and experiencing the game for the first time. Said experience, the local multiplayer mode. I don't remember how much I actually ended up enjoying that first experience with the game, but I know it definitely left an impression on me after that. Back then I didn't really own the Wii U in our house. It was technically family, so the moments I got to play on it were fewer than I'd like. Due to the fact that the system, again, wasn't mine, alongside the fact I had no real interest in playing the multiplayer due to a few different gripes I had, whatever time I did spend with the game's single player didn't last long. Until finally, I sold my copy. Don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure I thought the game was fun, but I wasn't playing it enough to deem keeping it around for a system that I wasn't able to play half the time to be a good idea. So, time passed, and over time it sort of faded to the back of my mind. But time did pass, and with it, things cropped back up. All of a sudden, the Switch was coming out. There was a sequel that was releasing on the console, and I found myself sucked back in once again. And now with Splatoon 3 well and fully out, and at its final Splatfest, I wanted to go back to this first game. Now there's a lot to talk about regarding Splatoon, which tends to be the case for online shooters. Unfortunately, a lot of those things are tied to the online multiplayer, and that's kind of dead right now. Sure, I could talk about the various game modes and the different specifics of the shops and all of that, but I know my strengths, and talking about something I didn't personally experience is not really one of them. So instead, let's talk about something I am familiar with. Splatoon is a third-person shooter. A very, very unconventional third-person shooter. And that's all to do with what the game does specifically that separates its identity from other games of the same genre. Firstly, you have your player character, and with it the introduction of Inklings. They're like squids, but hit Control-T, then just gonna stretch it out, and boom! Gremlin! They sport an impressive jump height, and can, well, turn into an actual squid. Starting the game up, you are first, before even a title screen, are introduced to the game's character creator. The character creator has the important options: gender, skin tone, eye color, and where's the rest of it? That's it? Okay, that's it. Yeah, those three. You get those three. Be happy about it. There's no custom hairstyles, just one per gender. And for the first game, it's good enough. As an Inkling, there's some nuance to your controls. While your kid form is par for the course, move with the left stick, jump with the X button, Y to reset your camera, etc., it all changes when you hold the left trigger down. Said left trigger turns you into a squid. Turning into a squid changes a lot. Your moving speed is dependent on whether or not you are swimming through ink or just flopping on the ground. If you're flopping on the ground, you're not going anywhere very quick. But once you slip into a patch of ink, you speed, fast, go. In both forms you can jump, but when you're a squid, you can jump and slip through grates in squid form without issue, and even climb up walls if they're covered in ink. Of course, you won't be able to do much combat like this. That is what the kid form is for. While in kid form, pressing the right trigger will fire your primary and the right bumper will use your secondary. Aiming is where things get interesting. With Splatoon, Nintendo brought back a favorite of theirs, that being motion controls. Motion-controlled aiming isn't entirely new, especially for Nintendo. Metroid Prime sort of introduced it in Corruption to control Samus's arm cannon through the use of the pointer and the IR sensor. Instead of a pointer, all the motion controls are tied to the controller's gyro controls. You can look left and right with the right stick as per usual, but more subtle and fine movements are done with motion controls. Also, if you want to look up or down, that's all motion control, so have fun getting the hang of that. When I first played these games, oh god, I could not wrap my head around it for the life of me. Now I can't touch Splatoon unless I'm using motion controls. If I had to give a tip for new players, give both a try and see what you like. Motion controls are weird and they feel awkward at first, but once you get the feel of them down, it's a level of control that's practically unrivaled on the console front. Now that that's done, go pop some balloons. And you guys see that? Yeah, so Splatoon doesn't really have guns. Instead of bullets, we have ink. Instead of real firearms, we have water guns. And instead of water, we have ink. Again, going full circle with this. Splatoon is a shooter, but your objective is never to just defeat your opponents. I mean, yeah, it's good to do so, but most of the game modes, hell, all of the game modes actually, aren't decided by who got more kills. It's more accurate to say that Splatoon is an objective-based shooter first, and a run-and-gun game second. And that's all tied into how you interact with the world around you. When you fire the weapon, you'll paint the ground in ink, which can be used to do a few things. Want to make a quick getaway or just move faster in general? Shift into your squid form and swim through the ink you've painted on the ground to move faster. Want to get to higher ground but your jump just isn't cutting it, or the wall is just too high? Paint the wall and swim up it. Run out of ink to shoot with your weapon? Submerge yourself in your ink and just wait for it to refill. Simple additions to an otherwise known formula, but it's in these additions that Splatoon firmly gains its identity, and where a lot of questions need to be answered. Questions like, how should I best traverse the map? What surfaces would be inkable so you could climb them to get a better vantage point? What if enemies are hiding in nearby ink waiting to pop out and attack while your back is turned? How best to avoid enemy ink? And a slew of other things that all suddenly give a whole new aspect to the game to think about. This is also added by the ability to super jump. Whenever you're in a multiplayer match, you can look down at the minimap displayed on the gamepad and select a point to jump to. This is usually either a teammate or your team's spawn platform. Now, of course, what's a weapon without a secondary and special? Each weapon in Splatoon has one of these, and they're usually dependent on the kit you're using. Your secondary usually takes the place of bombs. As an example, splat bombs. These are your standard affair. Throw a bomb, wait a few seconds, and boom! Splat bombs are the bread and butter of bombs. You can't cook a bomb like a grenade in some other games, as the detonation timer doesn't really start until the bomb hits the ground. It does mean you can get a quicker explosion if you roll your splat bomb, be that just on the ground, or rolling it off the edge to catch enemies off guard. Each bomb takes a good chunk of your ink tank to use, so it is always in your best effort to be relatively efficient with that ink usage. As for specials, they range from more self-preserving specials like the Bubbler, which covers you and nearby teammates with a bubble to absorb incoming fire, to more aggressive weapons like the Inkzooka, which, I mean, look at that, that's pretty self-explanatory. All specials immediately fill your ink tank up to max, so in cases where you're running low and don't have enough time to sink and refill, they're a good option to consider. Most of these weapons, secondaries, and specials are unique in playstyle, and each kit will change how you think about playing during Turf Wars! Or at least it would, if multiplayer was still up. Unfortunately, as of April 9th, 2024, Nintendo shut down all online services for the Wii U. The only real way to enjoy multiplayer Splatoon is through the local multiplayer, which is limited to 2 players and a single game mode not present in normal turf wars or ranked battles. It's unfortunate, but time will do that. Now, that's not to say there isn't a way to get your Wii U back online, but it's not really something I feel fully comfortable talking about, since topics of that variety can sometimes get kind of gray, especially on YouTube. It's for this reason that this section is mostly barren. Splatoon is a very online game. That means its daily news, the shops, and other vendors are all based off an online timetable, which is now gone because the server's closed. So, where does that leave us? Well, I can give a rough explanation for what these guys do. Booyabase was your one-stop shop for everything Turf Wars. It's comprised of 4 shops: Shrimp Kicks, Cooler Heads, Jelly Fresh, and Ammo Nights. With the exception of Ammo Nights, the other 3 shops are all based around what you wear to war. Turf Wars, to clarify. Shrimp Cakes is run by Krusty Sean, who sells shoes. Cooler Heads is run by Annie and Mo, selling hats and other such headwear. And Jelly Fresh is run by Jalonzo, who rounds the apparel front out with shirts. Ammo Nights is run by Sheldon, and this is where you get your kit set for Turf Wars. At least you would if the online was still working. Even past that, unless you got to level 3 through online matches, they won't even give you the time of day. There's also Spike, but he's locked behind Super Sea Snails. And, well, Splatoon 1 hasn't really had a Splatfest in a while, so getting any of those is not really possible since... And, well, rounding this back to the start, there's the local play. But for both players to have motion controls, you have to perform a fair bit of black magic, and yeah, no. That just hurts to look at. It's like the Wiimote had a BDSM fetish. The fact that it's the legitimate solution Nintendo came up with is astonishing to me. I mean, congratulations, you fixed the problem of the Pro Controller not having motion controls by slapping a Wiimote to the back, but like, if it works, cool, but I'm good. Thankfully, Splatoon is not a multiplayer-only game. After all, it has a single player. Welcome to the real meat of this video. While I will go fully on record to say that I am not qualified to talk about the multiplayer, on account of not really ever having had a chance to sink my teeth into it, I do feel confident enough to talk about the single player. At least a fair bit. When you finish your tutorial, you're greeted to Inkopolis by the news, hosted by the Squid Sisters, Callie and Marie. Uh-oh, breaking news, the Great Zapfish has been stolen, which is like the worst thing since it kind of powers Inkopolis? Yeah, well, it's not like we can really do anything about it. Who knows, maybe this creepy old guy might know something about it. Welcome to Octo Valley. This is where the story mode of Splatoon takes place. Upon our arrival, we are recruited rather quickly into the new Squidbeak Splatoon as Agent 3, and are quickly suited up. This old squid here is Captain Cuttlefish. He explains to us that the Great Zapfish was stolen by the Octarian menace, and we need to go out there and rescue it and all the other Zapfish they also stole. Armed with our hero shot and some nifty hand-me-downs, let's talk about Octo Valley a bit more. Octo Valley is comprised of 5 zones, and it's our hub world for the single player. Each zone is made up of various kettles. These kettles are kind of like gateways or portals to each level. And once we're inside, it's up to us to cut a path to the Zapfish located at the end of the mission. First though, we need to find the stages. Each kettle is normally invisible, but it does shimmer if you look at it close enough. Shooting these invisible kettles with ink will make them visible, eventually allowing you to access the stage within. It's here within these stages we meet our enemies, the Octarians. The Octarians are made up of a variety of enemy types, giving a lot of room for engaging combat design. You have your standard Octo Troopers, Shielded Octo Troopers, Twinticle Octo Troopers, Octo Balls, Octopods, Literal Roombas, Octo Bombers, Octo Stamps, Octo Divers, Octo Snipers, Flutters, Octorpedoes. There's a lot of guys between us and the Great Zapfish is what I'm trying to say. You start each level with 3 lives. Your run out boots you out of the level. Every checkpoint grants you another, so unless you're really struggling here, you're not gonna have too much trouble with these levels. Besides, it's not like we're alone here. We have Captain Cuttlefish offering us moral support through our radio. I mean, he's trying his best, especially for someone his age. Cuttlefish will chime in during our stages, offering us advice or warnings as to what's ahead of us, or just whatever other random commentary he deems necessary to speak about. The writing of Splatoon and its characters are always so charming, and it really does help the memorability of the game's story stand out more. The first zone is your standard beginner stages. Nothing truly game-changing off the bat, just the basics. While each stage's goal is the same, grab the zapfish at the end, it's not the only objective you have. Each stage is littered with these eggs. Collecting them will allow you to upgrade and unlock more options. These come in the form of increased fire rate, increased ink capacity, and more bombs. Aside from the trusty Splat Bomb you've come equipped with, in the single player you can also unlock the Burst Bomb and Seekers. Burst Bombs are less powerful than Splat Bombs, but they trade power for speed and ink efficiency. A Burst Bomb will immediately explode upon contact, and due to the amount of ink they take, you can easily chain more than one Burst Bomb with only a single ink tank. If you're a fan of mobility, Seekers, they are your new best friend. You can't arch or throw for the bomb like you can with Burst and Splat Bombs, as the Seeker will always deploy at your feet. When it does so, it'll immediately rush off ahead, leaving a trail of ink behind for you to swim through. But if an enemy is close by when they're launched, they'll focus on them and rush towards the enemy. After enough time, the bomb will explode. But when compared to Burst and Splat Bombs, Seekers are a lot more utility-focused by comparison. Upgrades are one thing, and no matter what you do during a stage, you'll be racking up enough eggs to purchase those with enough time. What you really want to keep an eye out for are these, Sunken Scrolls. This is where the magic is, or, well, where all that juicy lore is kept. Most of it is blatant Octarian propaganda against Inkling society. I mean, look at this. Look at it. But there's a fair amount of it that's also fairly eye-opening. That isn't all the stages can provide you, however, as stages will often give you power-ups in the form of armor and special cans. Armor is basically another barrier between you and death. You can have at most 3 additional armor stacks, and it is very helpful. The more armor you have, the less likely your natural armor will break. And once your natural armor breaks, well, yeah. Special cans are a more offensive power-up, giving you access to various different specials, be that the Bubbler or the Inkzooka, like I brought up earlier, or the last available special, Bomb Rush, which allows you to throw out bombs without consuming ink as long as the special is active. Assuming you clear a stage without using a special, or with your armor still unbroken, you'll get more eggs as a reward. At the end of each zone, we have a boss kettle. Inside is, well, a boss. Each zone has its own unique boss, with the first being the Octo Stomp. All things considered, the Octo Stomp is a pretty easy boss. It's a cube with a stamp for a face. All you need to do is ink its sides once it tries to smush you like a thwomp would Mario, and then swim up to its back where you can shoot its tentacled weak point. There's always 3 stages to a boss fight though. That's true for the Octo Stomp, but not as much. He loses a few panels during his second phase, but it's nothing too problematic. By the 3rd stage, those panels are moving, and yeah, it gives a bit more challenge, but it's a remarkably easy boss compared to what's to come. Though as the first of many, it's still a solid challenge, if a bit simple. It's once we get to the second zone of Octo Valley that things start really getting different. While most of the stages are similar enough to the first zones, it's here that we are introduced to the first curveball of the game, the Octolings. While the Octarian army is mostly composed of the guys we've seen up to this point, its biggest and most versatile members are the Octolings. In the game, the Octolings we fight are basically just player CPUs. This means we play by the same rules. Squid, Octoform, Kid Forms, anything we can theoretically do as a normal player, so too can the Octolings. It's the first real taste of what online multiplayer would have been like, but yeah, that would've is accurate. But while from a gameplay perspective things are simple, lore-wise, not so much. While most of the Sunken Scrolls have either been propaganda or simple news about the various shops within Inkopolis, there are a few that tell of events predating the game, about something called the Great Turf War. The Great Turf War was fought between the Inklings and the Octarians. While originally being on good terms with each other, things fell apart due to the rising sea levels, making less and less land available to live on. As a result, they fought, and as we can now see, the Inklings won that turf war. With the Octarians' defeat, they were exiled, and found their new home in the domes within the kettles. But now, after 100 years, they're back, and are clearly a bit determined to change some things. Whatever the case is, whatever's happening right now has to be stopped. which means more bosses to clear so we can get closer to the Great Zapfish. The second boss you'll fight is the Octo nozzle, a strange faucet-looking thing covered in moss and greenery. The only way to hit its weak point is by lowering it, which you do by shooting the... I don't know if I'd call that a belly button, but it's definitely a weak point worth focusing on. Once it's down, you'll be able to once again create a path to its true weak point and shoot it until it splats. Phases 2 and 3 are about the same, although admittedly Phase 2 feels more challenging than 3 is. The boss attacks normally by firing a ball of ink from its nozzle. When the ball touches the ground, it'll shoot out ahead. By Phase 2 that changes, so whenever it drops a massive ball of ink, the ink spreads out in a wave of normal-sized projectiles. By Phase 3, instead of shooting in a wave like before, all of the ink balls are now shot out in a straight line. I mean, probably painful if you're caught in it, but it's really not hard to just move to the side and avoid it. Again, Phase 3 is laughably easier than the second. With each boss defeated, you get a new schematic for a weapon. These weapon schematics are placed on the last page of the Sunken Scroll. What you should be able to do with them is bring them to Sheldon, the owner of the weapon shop, in order to get access to new weapon kits. But due to the fact that the online services are that, we can't do that. Especially if we started the game after online went down. Again, Sheldon will not give us the time of day because we're not fresh. It's with the second boss's defeat that things start getting concerning for us. With each boss defeated, we have a quick post-boss call with our boss about our current progress. Only this time we seem to have an unknown guest listening in on us. It's by the time we get to the third zone that we reach a comfortable normal. First 6 or so stages are a simple rush to the finish with some stage gimmicks, like geysers or invisible paths you need to spray ink on in order to see. But the last 2 are another rematch against more Octolinks, and then a run-in with an Octo Striker. Octo Strikers are another interesting enemy. They're exclusive to the UFO stages where your goal is to reach their camping spot, as they spam ink strikes at you as you work your way through the map. On a side note, each map containing Octo Strikers or Octolinks are also actual multiplayer maps, albeit altered slightly to better suit the single player's level design. But by this point, none of this is really new to us. So we once again find ourselves at the next boss, the Octo Whirl. The Octo Whirl is basically invulnerable normally. He is constantly spinning and spraying ink everywhere. Only way to do any real damage is to coat the ground in front of him that he's charging towards to... go ahead, Ron, you say it.
Yeah, Shulk! Get stuck in!
With each new phase, it's less that the boss himself changes, and more a fact that the arena does. Segments of the map begin to rotate, making covering a good section of ink for the boss to get stuck in a lot harder. By Phase 3, they just up and get rid of large parts of inkable terrain and replace it with uninkable terrain. Assuming you line things up right, there's not really a big difference between the phases. That said, it's a fun boss all around. With the defeat of the boss, Captain Cuttlefish has a feeling that something's off and goes to investigate. Unfortunately for both him and us, his gut was right, and we hear him getting squidnapped over the radio, leaving us all alone on our way to the next zone. With Captain Cuttlefish gone, any stage we've been to previously will be silent, since he's no longer there to provide commentary, which is a good touch. That said, while our first step without guidance goes well enough, we quickly learn that we're not alone, as backup arrives in the radio form of Agents 1 and 2, our seniors, as it were. These two take over for Cuttlefish in terms of radio chatter, and they're great. Before it was just Cuttlefish bouncing off our silence, now Agents 1 and 2 are able to bounce their dialogue off each other, which to me is much more enjoyable. The boss of Zone 4 is the Octoma. You like dentistry? Well, do I have good news for you! The Octoma will submerge itself under the ink and charge at you, popping its teeth out of the ink like a bear trap to lock you in. Thankfully, they're quite susceptible to chipping, as we can smash our way out with ink and escape before it chomps down. What we want to do is throw a bomb into its mouth, and the easiest way to do that is to break enough teeth to make a big enough opening to do so. Or break enough teeth to make a dentist cry tears of joy, one of the two. Once we do, it's business as usual by attacking the weak spot. Phases 2 and 3 are basically just buff versions of Phase 1. Each new set of teeth is more durable, and it's much quicker to bite with each phase.
Oh, and of course, how could I forget? His teeth fire off his lasers!
But once we finish practicing poor dental care, we're able to open up our path to the last zone, and with it, the final boss. The last zone is a full test of everything we've went through so far. Each of the remaining levels are challenging, in a good way, to really show how well you've progressed through Octo Valley. One of the main aspects I enjoy about the single player is just how well it prepares you for most of what multiplayer has to offer. The game helps you get familiar with various secondaries and specials through the single player, so when it comes time to find a weapon to main in multiplayer, you won't have to learn as much of your kit since you've had a chance to really experiment with some of the possible options during solo play. For as challenging as the last stages are, nothing beats the final boss in terms of difficulty. Shooting ourselves up to the last boss kettle, we find ourselves face to face with Captain Cuttlefish, outright telling us that whatever we're walking into is a trap. We've come a bit far now, so really our only option is to press onward. And it's here we come face to face with the octopus behind it all, DJ Octavio. DJ Octavio is the final boss of Splatoon. He pilots the Octobot King, a massive spherical robot that also functions as a pretty sick soundstage. DJ Octavio is not to be taken lightly, no matter how simple his attack patterns look. His primary method of attack is by launching Octorpedoes at you, which will home in on you and explode if they hit you or enough time passes. They're relatively easy to destroy though, so please shoot them out of the sky as soon as you can. Mainly because you'll want that time of undivided attention for the Octobot King's fists. Once he's launched a few Octorpedoes at you, he'll quickly follow up with a 1-2 punch from both fists. Thankfully, as long as you time it right, you can blow the fists back into Octavio's face by firing enough ink at them to return them to sender. Each time Octavio is hit by his own fists, he'll retreat backwards, revealing more platforms to work your way down. Rinse and repeat through these rough steps until he gets to the end of the area, which is where he'll throw a massive bomb at you now that he's kinda cornered. Thankfully, same rules apply for this as they do the fists, meaning if you shoot it enough, it'll be bounced backwards and send him flying to the next area to begin another phase of the fight. With phase 2 of the fight, everything picks up. His attacks come out faster, and he'll also start firing killer whale beams in your general direction, making the available spacing a bit more tricky to work with. But with Perseverance, you can push him back to the edge of this area. He's learned this time though, and instead of simply letting the rebounded bomb hit him, he decides it's time to play tennis. DJ Octavio will hit the bomb back at you with his fist. Each time he does so, the bomb will speed up sharply, so it is imperative that you have a full tank of ink when this happens. Unfortunately, he's not done quite yet, as his next phase picks up even more! Now, hey, have some bombs! They spawn enemies if you don't blow them up with ink. I'd recommend doing that! Otherwise, standard rinse and repeat for tennis. Rinse and repeat a few times. He's got a few bombs to work through first. Once you send him back to the last area, it's time for the final phase. It's here that Agents 1 and 2 finally decide to help, hijacking DJ Octavio's aux cord to play a song of their own. To the surprise of no one, probably. I mean, it was kind of obvious, guys. Agents 1 and 2 are in fact Callie and Marie of the Squid Sisters, and they're here to give this final boss a track worthy of the phrase, that heavenly melody. Phase 3 starts with the Calamari incantation blasting in the background, and our fight begins once again. If there is a track that I think of most when I hear Splatoon, the Calamari incantation is definitely in the top 3. It is such a hype song, and the fact that DJ Octavio himself can't help but dance to it really proves that point. Speaking of the DJ, he puts his all into this last phase. There's no new elements to worry about, but everything he's used before has gotten even faster now. Your aim needs to almost snap from one target to the next in order to properly manage some of his attacks, and properly baiting where he fires the killer whale-like attack will be a matter of whether you do, or do not, have space to maneuver for a few precious seconds that you might need to. Running through the final phase, this is one of the hardest fights Splatoon has to offer, and it is so good. You need to constantly be moving, constantly be firing, constantly be reloading ink so you have the ability to keep firing, and on top of that, the Calamari incantation blasting in the background is such a good motivator and a reward for getting to this final phase. Agent 3 engages in one last tennis match, knocking DJ Octavio out of the Octobot King and fires one last time at the final boss to finish the fight. With one final crossfade to black as DJ Octavio's robot blows up, we are shown a news report by Callie and Marie as we once more have some breaking news! The Great Zapfish is back! How? Trust us, we totally don't know how that happened. Let's just move on and not ask any questions, yeah? Laying it on a bit thick, huh guys? With the Great Zapfish back on Inkopolis Tower, that's the end of Octo Valley. And with that, roll credits! Of course, just because the game is done doesn't mean we can't replay Octo Valley. Once you're free of the credits, you can head back to Octo Valley to find DJ Octavio and Captain Cuttlefish at the landing. Cuttlefish is now over the moon, as it were, that our mission was successful, and DJ Octavio is in a snow globe. Huh. Now normally that'd make replaying the final boss difficult if he's captured, but yeah, maybe the snow globe wasn't the best idea. Splatoon is awesome. I love this series so much, and the fact that one of Nintendo's most popular game franchises, especially as of late, started off on the Wii U of all things and lived to reach greater heights is honestly astonishing to me. Splatoon should honestly not have gotten as far as it did. It was a new IP by Nintendo during a time where their home console wasn't selling well, in a genre of game that was not really close to a lot of what Nintendo had developed as a first party. And it was an online multiplayer game also by Nintendo. There were so many things that could have sunk Splatoon before it had a fair chance. But it didn't somehow. Splatoon is already 3 games strong. With the Switch's success, Splatoon blew up with the release of its sequel, and with the final Splatfest of Splatoon 3 coming upon us really soon, I mean like as of recording this voiceover, it's a month from now. It's honestly inspiring to see how far this game has come. Splatoon is a game that I believe everyone should have the chance to play. At minimum, its single player is something to be experienced with your own hands. It's one of the only things the online shutdown couldn't take away. I wouldn't say it's my favorite game in the series. It has its fair share of growing pains it's clearly still going through, but they don't detract from the gameplay enough to really warrant a mention. Besides, in the end, this was a taste of what was to come. And might I say, it's definitely something to have, and even now, still look forward to. Thank you all so much for watching. It's been a while since I've done a video like this, huh? And I'm sorry for the wait on that part. Unfortunately, it might be a bit until the next video like this one. I'm trying to work out exactly what I want this series to be going forward from a writing perspective, and I'm very much still in that awkward growing period where everything is still messy trying to work out what I want to do with this. Thank you to CPU Cyanheart for the video footage. I say that even though I both played the game and recorded the footage uploaded to said channel. If you want to check out our run through Octo Valley, feel free to check the link in the description for the Splatoon playlist on Cyan's channel. It's a fun ride. Hell, right now we're going through Splatoon 2, so assuming I get this out and we're still uploading videos of that, give that a look out as well. For now though, I'll see all my fellow procrastinators again in whatever we find ourselves doing next. Jana!